Worship in the new earthly tabernacle. Now the first covenant had regulations for worship and also an earthly sanctuary. As the tabernacle was set up, its first room was the lampstand, the table, and the consecrated bread, and it was called the holy place. Behind the second curtain was a room, and it was called the most holy place, which had the golden altar of incense and the gold-covered ark of the covenant. This ark contained the gold jar of manna, Aaron's staff that had budded, Aaron's staff that had budded, and the stone tablets of the covenant. Above the ark were the cherubim of the glory overshadowing the atonement cover, but we cannot discuss these things in detail now. When everything had been arranged like this, the priests entered regularly into the outer room to carry on their ministry, but the high priest entered the inner room, and that only once a year, and never without blood, for which he offered for himself and for the sins of the people have committed in ignorance. The Holy Spirit was showing by this that the way into the most holy place had not been yet disclosed, as long as the first tabernacle was still standing. This was an illustration for the present time, indicating that the gifts and sacrifices being offered were not able to clear away the conscience of the worshipper, and they are only a matter of food and drink and various ceremonial washings, external regulations applying to them until the new order. The blood of Christ. When Christ came as a high priest of the good things that are already here, he went through the greater and more perfect tabernacle, not man-made, that is to say, not part of this creation. Not man-made, that is to say, not part of this creation. He did not enter by means of the blood of goats or calves, but he entered the most holy place once and for all by his own blood. Having obtained eternal redemption, the blood of goats and bulls and the ashes of a heifer sprinkled on those who are ceremonial unclean, sanctify them so that they are outwardly clean. How much more then will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offers himself unblemished to God, cleanse our consciences from acts that lead to death, so that we may serve the living God. For this reason Christ is the mediator of a new covenant, and those who are called may receive the promised eternal inheritance now that he has died as a ransom to set them free from the sins committed under the first covenant. In the case of a will, it is necessary to prove the death of the one who made it, because a will is in force only when somebody has died. It never takes effect while the one who made it was living. This is why even in the first covenant it was not put into effect without blood. When Moses had proclaimed every commandment of the law to all people, he took the blood of calves, together with water, scarlet wool, branches, and hyssop, and sprinkled the scroll. And all the people, he said, "This is the blood of the covenant which God has commanded you to keep." In the same way he sprinkled with the blood both the tabernacle and everything used in the ceremonies. In fact, the law requires that nearly everything be cleansed with blood. Without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. It was necessary, then, for the copies of heavenly places to be purified with these sacrifices, but in heavenly things themselves with better sacrifices than these. For Christ did not enter a man-made sanctuary that was only a copy of the true one. He entered heaven itself, now to appear for us in God's presence, nor did he enter heaven to offer himself again, the way the high priest enters the most holy place every year with blood that is not his own. Then Christ would have had to suffer many times since the creation of the world. But now he has appeared once and for all at the end of the ages to do away with sin by the sacrifice of himself. Just as a man is destined to die once, and after that to face judgment. So Christ was sacrificed once to take away the sins of many people, and he will appear a second time, not to bear sin, but to bring salvation to those who are waiting for him. A once and for all sacrifice. Jewish readers of Hebrews were very familiar with religious rituals described in this chapter. Step by step, the author shows how Christ's new covenant improves on the old one. Instead of many sacrifices, he made only one, himself, thus gaining free and complete forgiveness for us. The chapter uses an analogy to explain why Christ's death was necessary. It compares God's grace to a will. Wealth is passed down only when death occurs. Christ's death freed up the inheritance for us.